So I'm so excited to introduce our speaker, Sarah Brill. Sarah is an independent financial and money mindset coach. Sarah trained with Animas in 2018 and has coached over 750 people over the last 6 years. Sarah has gone from working as an internal coach to an independent financial coach and money mindset mentor. Sarah helps people break free from limiting beliefs and live financially free lives. And you might have seen Sarah before. She has delivered lectures and sessions for us before at Animas, so it's really great to have her today for the summit. And with that, I'm going to hand over to you, Sarah.
Awesome. Thanks so much for the lovely introduction. And congrats everyone for being here, for making it to the end of the day. And I'm going to try and keep everyone as awake as possible because I'm fully aware some of you have been sitting at your computers probably since 9 o'clock this morning or since last night if you are in LA or anywhere else in the world. So I am coming to you from Hertfordshire, just outside London. As Izzy said, I trained with Animas back in 2018. And like a lot of new coaches, I didn't come from a coaching background. I used to work in corporate. I was a bit of an expat. So as some of you might have heard my story, and feel free to check out the interview that I did with David earlier this year on the Animas YouTube. I spoke about how I used to live in Dubai as an expat. I worked in corporate, experienced burnout, and decided to completely reshape my life. And I went traveling for 3 years. And that journey kind of took me to become a bit of a dive master as a scuba diver in Thailand. And after a long travel journey of 3 years, I came back to the UK. And after having all this freedom in my life, I just thought, I don't want to go back to this rat race. I don't want to go back to this life where I have a boss who's telling me what I need to do, when I need to show up. I'm a bit of a rebel. I like to do things on my own terms. And I just felt like there had to be a better way of doing things. And that is where Animas actually found me. They found me on probably some advert somewhere on Facebook or Instagram. And I got totally inspired by Nick's approach, the Animas approach, and just really the way that we can really harness our own unique skills and create the lives for ourselves that we really, really desire. Now, I know that one of the biggest challenges that people face as coaches, or we all face as coaches, is this idea of financial security. So how do we create sustainable business for ourselves? How do we wake up every day and know that the work we're doing is enjoyable? We're not worrying about where money's coming from, that we can pay the bills when we need to, we can go on holiday when we want to. And I think a lot of the time, and I experienced this in my own journey when I started off as coaching, that I really struggled to create that financial security for myself. And that's what ultimately led me on this path of discovering how to create financial freedom. And it's not necessarily just about the money, it's about what we do with it. It's about the agency and the life that we create for ourselves. So I took a bit of an unconventional route into running my own business because I was that person who thought, I don't want to go back into employment. And guess what? I ended up working in-house as a financial coach. And I've also worked as some form of an associate coach as well, where I was freelancing for a company and coaching either their staff or their clients and using their framework. And one of the things I really missed about independent coaching is that we can design our coaching practices in our vision. We are creators. And really today, I want to start talking about how you can start building this thriving independent business for yourselves. And if you are someone who's thinking about coaching and maybe you want to be an independent coach, then you are definitely in the right room today. Maybe you're thinking, I don't even know what type of coach I want to be yet. So I hope today gives you a bit of insight, or this session at least gives you a bit of insight into what that might look like for you and creating your vision of what it is to be an independent financial coach. So you might be joining from maybe 3 different places. Either you're starting to think about it and you've sort of decided that you're going to be all in on your coaching business and this is the route for you. You might already have a few clients, but maybe you're struggling to create some form of consistency, sustainability, and you're kind of feeling like, I don't want to go back to employment, but you're in the place of, in between deciding what's this trajectory going to look like for you. Or maybe, and I see here there's some familiar names, so maybe you're an established coach. Maybe you're someone who has created a business for yourself, things are going great, you have that level of financial security, and now you're looking to create freedom for yourself by scaling and investing further into your business and your own skills. Now, I call this sustainable because it really is about creating regulation in your emotions. Because something that I've noticed that has come up in some of the other conversations is this fear of, where are the clients? And it creates this idea of scarcity and lack. So we're going to dive more into that. But whatever level you're at, it is totally possible to achieve all of the things that you want to achieve. And so we're going to be creating some of that magic today. So first of all, I want to ask you, all of you, and if you could write in the chat, what change would you like to see in your life? What change would you like to see in your life? Well, I don't know where my chat's disappeared to, but who's brave enough? Let's see who's going to get visible. What change would you like to see in your life? More travel, financial independence, more freedom. I'd like to attract some clients to my coaching business, enjoy my downtime because I know it's not putting my family's livelihood and my business at risk. Yes. A job that feels fulfilling and rewarding, regular income, loving these ideas. A healthy business, which enables me to work truly flexibly and creatively. And I'd say that is one of the core differences between being an independent coach, whatever type of independent you are, or working for a company, because you do have true flexibility and creativity, abundance, time to create, time to meet people, more purpose. Yeah, so there's a lot of similar things coming up here. And obviously there isn't a right or wrong answer, right? Earn an income, that's come up quite a lot. Downtime, choice over when I work, when I learn, when I take a break and still be serving. Loving this. Okay, so there's some other things that often come up as well. So having a financial legacy, creating some kind of connection, helping other people. Often as coaches, we go into business because we want to help other people. And ultimately, all of these things are a sample of humanity. We are a sample of humanity at large, of what our most profound desires are. Right? And you and your business, your coaching practice, that is the vessel that is can facilitate these changes, both in your life, but also for other people as well. Right? Time to develop a coaching offer. Yeah. Okay. So this is all about priorities, but this is ultimately, the human experience. Now, we know as coaches, we all know that 90% of what we do is driven by our thoughts. 90% of what we do is driven by our thoughts. And so sometimes we set off with the intention, and I guess I'm speaking to the room as if we are setting up financial coaching businesses, but maybe we try and do bits here and there. We maybe go out and get a client or two. Maybe we undercharge a little bit or we don't charge at all. Right? We keep ourselves busy, quote unquote. But sometimes it never feels like enough. And so what happens is we might end up having arguments with our partner about money. We might start thinking now, we're in mid-November, we might start thinking about, what presents are we going to afford the kids or the grandkids this Christmas? Are we going to be shopping on Black Friday? Can I afford to leave my job right now? And we want to be financially responsible. We want to be organized. We want to be having less arguments, more contribution, more impact in the world, right? As you've all said by the chat, right? We don't want to have to think about every purchase that we make, whether it's in ourselves or in our lives at large. We don't want to have to worry about where these clients are coming from. And so ultimately, we have to become the person who reflects these values, right? We have to become the person who's going to stand up for those things that we want to achieve in life. Now, the thing is, old habits die hard. And we know this because of our programming and our conditioning, right? And if you're new to this beautiful journey that you're about to embark on, you're going to learn loads of tools and skills that you can use, not only to help your clients, but are going to help you as well. Because for me, Animas was completely transformational. But up until this point, all of that conditioning, all of the things you know to be true about your life, those are deep rooted. Those roots run really deep into what we think a successful coaching business is going to look like. And some might say this is the law of entropy. And I don't want to give us all a science lesson today, but this is the second law of thermodynamics, right? And it states that the entropy of a system will increase or remain the same over time unless an outward energy is added. In other words, we go through life and it can sometimes feel like we're walking up an escalator that's going downwards, right? No matter how much we try, we go out to market, we try and market ourselves, we have conversations with people, and no matter how much we try, every time we try and build this coaching business, we get to a point where either we plateau, and that could apply whether you've got 2 clients or 200 clients. It really doesn't matter. We all experience this when we get to a place where we meet resistance in our own lives. And I know there's been a lot of talk today about resilience, but it's not just about resilience. It's about how we respond to that. So we can be persevering, but it can still feel like we're running on the escalator that's going downwards, right? It can feel like we're trying harder and harder and faster to get quicker and quicker to get to the goals that we want to achieve. But it really doesn't have to be like that. It really doesn't have to be like that. And I know that to be true because it's how I have felt in my own life, right? Yeah, you run on a hamster wheel. Exactly. So you know exactly what you should be doing, but it's this deep conditioning. And we get these questions, and I've heard some of the questions. Is it even possible to run a successful coaching business? Are there any people in the world who are only doing coaching and being successful from it? And I can tell you from my world that yes, there definitely are. But these thoughts, these perceptions that we have, they block us. They block us from setting expectations for ourselves. They block us from setting boundaries, from charging our worth, and they can limit the impact that we're actually having in the world. Right? As I said from my own story, that's why I ended up going back into associate coaching and internal coaching, right? But there are thousands of people in the world, probably tens of thousands of people in the world who run successful coaching businesses. Why? Because they have created for themselves this new paradigm where success exists, okay? And possibly this paradigm doesn't exist for you yet. Right? But as coaches, we are all creators. We are creators. We have the capacity to create a successful life for ourselves and facilitate that for our clients with full agency, right? The beauty of being an independent coach is you have no glass ceiling. You have no one to tell you you can't coach like that, right? We have complete control. And for some people, that can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse. right? Because that brings about uncertainty, it brings about other questions. And so we're going to dive into a little bit of visualization towards the end. Now, this is important because sometimes we think of our business as something that is separate from ourselves. But my view, or a view that we could take, is that our businesses are an extension of ourselves, right? There's been a lot of talk today about knowing yourself, understanding yourself, what your values are, what you stand for, how you're going to help people. You know, there's going to be health coaches in the room. There might be Reiki practitioners. I'm a financial coach. There are so many different ways of coaching. But ultimately, in your life, your business is an extension of who you are and what you stand for. And so all pieces of our life are related to each other. So whether you're thinking to yourself, and these are all common things that we all think, you know, can I afford to go on holiday? Is my business going to do well? Where should I put my money? What should I do with it? Do I need to register for a limited company? Do I need to pay VAT? Do I need to pay corporation tax? How do I pay myself? Right? Your business does not function or operate without you. But beneath that, your relationship with money is going to show up in every area of your life and your business. And there's a beautiful analogy that I'm going to share with you for this. And for this, I have bought my trusty boat. This is my trusty boat. And some of you are going to be looking at me like, why have you bought a boat? So this boat is not actually my boat. It's my nephew's boat. But this boat represents our life. And when everything in our life that fits inside of this boat is on track, i.e., when we feel that we're fulfilled, when we feel that our business is running as it should be, when we feel like we have, you know, our health and our well-being, when we have purpose in our life, that is when the boat is sailing. Everything is going swimmingly, excuse the pun. But what happens if there's a hole in the boat? Can someone tell me what happens if there is a hole in the boat?
It sinks.
It sinks. Exactly. So even if one thing inside that boat is not aligned, the boat is going to sink. Right? The boat is going to sink. It's like the Titanic. And we don't want that to happen. And sometimes we think, suddenly, all of a sudden, where have the clients gone? All of a sudden, what's happened? You know, why are things not on track? Why are things not aligning in the way that we expect them to be? And I call this suddenly syndrome, that suddenly we think something has happened to us. Stay away from the icebergs, exactly. But that's, again, the same thing, right? We can say suddenly an iceberg appeared, right? But if we're prepared for things and armored in the right way, then the boat's never going to sink, right? So there is no such thing as suddenly, right? There's no such thing as chance. We create our own luck, right? We create our own destiny, essentially. There are holes everywhere. There are holes everywhere. But ultimately, life is one. Life is like the boat. All elements of life is like the boat. So in order to have a successful coaching business, you need to be aligned in all areas of your life. And this is something that I really hadn't processed in the same way that I do now. Because when I started coaching, I very much was in the place of scarcity, thinking, where am I going to get clients from? I had the same questions, you know, when I started. Where am I going to get clients from? And I realized this was coming from a place of scarcity, right? So all elements of our life need to be aligned for things to feel like we're in flow and it's easy. Independent coaching, I heard someone say earlier, it might have been Nick, but someone said that the associate coaching route was easier than independent coaching. That might be true for some people, but it might not be true for other people. I find being an independent coach more empowering and therefore easier for me than I did working internally. Right? So we all have our strengths. And in order to have a successful coaching business, we need to be aligned and leaning into those strengths. Right? So it's not just about the money, it's about what the money represents. So if you're thinking, I suddenly have no money, or I suddenly have to have a bill to pay, or suddenly I have no clients, or all of a sudden my client hasn't paid me and now I need to ask them for money. All of these things are an accumulation of our life experiences and how we view the world. And when we're in alignment, this flow feels a bit like an accordion, right? It opens up in 3D and opportunities present themselves to us. Okay, there is no one right way. And I know a lot of you here are like, what's the silver bullet to creating my coaching business? There is no silver bullet. You create your own unique blueprint. Now, there's always a cause and effect. We know this, right? We know there's always a cause and an effect. So when you're running a coaching business, people are paying you, or let's start here. Money is an exchange of value, right? We will agree to that. Money is an exchange of value, right? You pay me, something happens. So what do people pay us for in coaching? Maybe put in the chat. What are people exchanging their money for when they pay coaching? Anyone in the chat? Any ideas? Guidance, change, space, outcomes, results, solving their problem, our expertise, clarity, empowerment, results, confidence, someone that listens to them. Yeah. Okay. So all of these things are right. The answer that I was looking for, the closest one, is possibly outcomes or results or change. So people are paying for a transformation. People are paying for a transformation. That is what people are paying for. Animas, the diploma, is teaching you how to transform people's lives. It's a transformative coaching diploma. It says it in the title, right? We are the masters of helping people transform their lives. So you, within that framework, are discovering which medium or which vessel you want to facilitate that change for other people. And that could come in many different forms, right? But whatever we focus on grows. Whatever we focus on grows. So what was your initial thought when you set out to create or build your independent coaching business? What was your thought? So we all know that the effects that show up in the world is a cause of our thoughts, right? So some people might say, and I saw this earlier in the chat, someone said they were joining from work, right? Some people come from this place of, I don't want to go back to employment. And that was very much how I felt at the beginning. I didn't want to have a boss. Maybe we think to ourselves, I don't want to go back to employment. Now, the challenge with when we're not specific is the universe is going to respond in some way, right? There's going to be an effect to that thought that we have, right? This is the stream of consciousness. Our thoughts manifest in our head and they transpire into action, right? And for those of you that are doing cognitions or you've done cognitions, you'll understand pieces of this, right? Because how we think manifests itself and it shows up in our actions, right? So if we say to the universe, I don't want to go back to employment, what's going to happen is we're going to start manifesting not going back to employment. And so the origin of our thought when we're creating a coaching business is focusing on the cause and effect that we want to see in the world. Right? So for me personally, that is seeing people who are thriving in their business and financially, because that's what I coach through in my business. For someone who's a health coach, that might be seeing more people in the world who have healthier lives, who live longer. Right? So I hope this is landing where I'm getting at, because we need to have a really clear and positive vision about what we want to create for ourselves, right? What we focus on grows. And so we need to be really intentional with that goal setting at a big level for our lives, but also on the level of, how much do we need? Why do we want that money? Right? Maybe, and for those of you that don't know that I do the money personality quiz, or I have a money personality quiz, for you alchemists out there, you might be saying it's not about the money. That's a whole other thing that we'll come to a bit later. But, we need to be really specific with why we want it. And if you can conceive it, I can guarantee that it's meant for you. It's just finding and leaning into that path that's going to work for you, right? Now, this comment was said a bit earlier today, and I didn't pinch this from Nick, although I was in his talk earlier, but I didn't pinch this from him because I did this before. But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. And that is why sometimes we can feel like we've plateaued at some level because of these old habits that have ingrained themselves, and we start questioning, is everything on social media real? Are people making 6, 7, 8-figure businesses, right? Is that even achievable? And so sometimes we can respond to that emotionally rather than being practical in our business. So it's important to have this goal that we've set up for ourselves. It's important to get really clear on not just the money that we want to make in our business, how that's going to reflect back into our personal lives, but also what that means for the world at large, what imprint we want to have, and also on that level of, what do we want our day-to-day to look like? And the idea is not to get perfect. There is no such thing as perfect. If you think there's a business owner out there that has it all nailed, I'm telling you now they don't. Even if you think their funnel looks amazing and you're seeing all their adverts on Instagram, it's likely that back end they are making tweaks, probably on a daily basis, because the world is constantly changing. And this is where we may encounter a challenge. And challenges are just there to help us see ourselves. When we get a no from someone, that is a lesson for us. Their reason is their reason, and that's okay. But maybe there's something we're still more to learn. Maybe that wasn't meant for us at that moment in time, and that's okay. Right? Now, something that I often see as another challenge is people creating consistent income, having sustainable cash flow, peace of mind. It was said earlier, I think by Craig, he was like, if you're not resilient, then entrepreneurship is not for you. I think resilience is something that we also learn. It's also a skill until you're really in it and you're amongst it, till you can really lean in and feel, what your strategies are to overcome those obstacles. And that is where growth happens. Those challenges help us see ourselves in a different way, and that helps us to grow and expand. Right? Now, sometimes what happens is we hear a no, or we go out and we have conversations with people and we're like, where's the clients? Where is everyone? How do I even do this thing called business? And we tend to react emotionally. And often what I find is people sit in this place where maybe you hear a no or you get some form of rejection, and you end up maybe cleaning the house, making the beds, changing the bed sheets, doing the ironing, all of the things that you think are giving you space to help you move forward in your business and process things. But actually, procrastination is just a result of the emotion that we're experiencing at that time. So we do need to be emotionally resilient, but we also need to have the tools and the skill set to overcome and create that reality for ourselves. Okay, so we really need to let go of this idea that a coaching business needs to be done in a certain way. And it's about finding your unique pathway to success. And just a point to this, because earlier this year, I actually reached out to a marketing strategist. And she was very numbers driven. Funny, because I'm quite numbers driven, obviously, quite results driven. And I loved her work. But 6 months later, she came to me and she said, have you done all of the things? Have you filled out all of these boxes? Now, I also don't really like structure. So I love numbers, but I don't necessarily like structure, too much structure, because it makes me rebel against it, which is my money personality. But again, we'll park that. But what I discovered is actually I teach through the lens of your sacred money archetypes. And I know that this marketing strategist is a ruler in their archetypes. And what that meant was they were very target driven and they were very goal orientated. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but it might not work for everyone. It might not work for everyone. There are businesses that know to the T exactly how many people they're speaking to, what platforms they're speaking to them on. There are people out there who have no structure at all and just hop on Instagram and do a little live. And both can be successful. Both can work. It's just what works for you. Oh, I love that, Annette. Annette's just said that she knows the money archetypes. I have spoken about it before in some of the other work that I've done here. But if you're interested, I think there was a link in the description. So the third thing was we tend to react emotionally. And ultimately, we want to be taking this pause and stepping back, because when we pause, that is the beginning of wisdom. Silence has more power than millions of words. And as part of the human condition, we all have agency and power to pause and step out of what we're experiencing. There is no power without a little bit of adversity. And so if you're not feeling the adversity, if you're in that place where everything feels comfortable and easy, it ultimately means we're not growing. And I also learned this the hard way earlier last year when I'd set out my business as an independent coach again. And it took me 6 months to build up things again and start getting things ticking over. And I was in that place where I was climbing up the downward escalator. And I was like, I need to go faster. I need to do more. I'm very ambitious. And this year, I changed absolutely nothing except my energy. Absolutely nothing about the systems and the flow that I have in my business. I just changed the way I show up, and people started coming to me almost instantly. It was crazy. Luckily, I know how I did it, and that's what I teach. But once I started implementing that, it became a lot easier. And now it feels like a gift to be able to sit back and self-regulate. Because when we talk about financial security, it can be very anxiety-inducing. If you're a solopreneur and you are the coach, but also you're the salesperson, you're the marketing person, you feel like you've grown arms and legs and you're doing hundreds of things. Right? But sometimes all it takes is to have that step back, to step out of our reality that we've created for ourselves and lean into a little bit more of our true authenticity. And that is where the magic happens. So I am aware of the time. I'm just going to run this just for a couple more minutes, and then we'll open it up for questions. So do drop questions to Izzy or in the chat if you have any. Now, the world has changed a lot, even since I've done coaching, but the world has changed a lot in the past 20, 30, 40 years. I speak about this a lot. 40 years ago, women couldn't have a credit card, they couldn't get a mortgage. People used to stay in jobs for 40 years. Can you imagine today someone staying in a job for 40 years? People don't stay in a job for 5 minutes, let alone 40 years, right? Actually, I heard the stat recently that now on average, people stay in a job 2 years on average. 2 years. Why? Why do people have this need to constantly move, to change? It's because we have this hunger to learn more, to grow more, to be more successful, to have more knowledge. And that is collectively and individually. That's why you're here, right? It's why you came to coaching, because we want to be having, more knowledge. And we want to touch people's lives on a daily basis, right? We touch hundreds of people's lives on a daily basis, whether it's smiling to someone on the underground, whether it's having a conversation with someone at the coffee shop, whether you're DMing people on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever you hang out online. We are touching hundreds of lives on a daily basis. Okay, so the distance between where you are right now and having this business you desire is you. And look, I could sit here and I could tell you, you need to DM 100 people, you need to do 100 reels, you need to make 10 phone calls. All of that is redundant if you don't lean in to what your strengths are. Because if you're a connector, maybe you love networking. If you're a nurturer, maybe you love helping people. We all have our unique strengths, and it's about leaning into that. I'm just going to end off on this really nice analogy that I heard the other day about the arpeggio in Indonesia, where there are loads of colonies of monkeys. And if anyone's been to Indonesia, you'll know that there are loads of monkeys everywhere and they love to steal people's food. But these monkeys love to eat potatoes. They love to eat potatoes. And as you know, in Indonesia, there's loads of islands, right? So you've got monkeys across loads of different islands. And one day, one monkey decides that they like their potato better when it's dipped in the salt water of the sea. So this monkey dips its potato in the salt water and it tastes delicious. And all the other monkeys on the island think that this monkey's crazy, right? But slowly, a couple of monkeys decide to try it out. I wonder what happens if we dip our potato in the sea. Oh, it tastes nice. And slowly, this ripple effect of all the monkeys on this one island start to dip their potatoes in the salt water. And once they get to the 101st monkey, all of the monkeys on all of the islands start doing it. Even though the monkeys on all of the other islands have no connection to the monkey on this original island, they all start dipping their potatoes in the salt water. Why? This is the ripple effect that we have. This is the beauty of the transformation and the gift that we can give people, right? Because it might be one person you coach who has a ripple effect in their life. I coach people who think they're coming to me for money and they come away from a coaching session with me and their marriage is repaired, right? Because how we do something is how we do everything, by analogy from before. So every opportunity that comes to us is being filtered through the lens of our money archetypes. This is the framework that I personally teach. There are many different ways to run a successful coaching business, as I said. This is the way that I do it. And if you are interested in leaning into your specific blueprint for success, then do feel free to check that out after. Just lastly, there are 3 components that I think to building a successful coaching business. And as I said before, it's not about being perfect. It is about having a system, it is about having honesty, and it is about having motivation. Now, motivation will only get you so far. Motivation is like you wake up in the morning one day and you're like top of the world and you're feeling really on it. And the next day you're reacting emotionally. That point number 3, you're sitting on the sofa, you're having a nap in the middle of the day, right? That's motivation. For sustainable consistency, you need to have honesty and you need to have a system. It doesn't matter what system it is, but you need to have a system. Right? As I said before, it might not be an Excel spreadsheet where you need to know every single expense, but it needs to be a system that works for you, because that is where you're going to find the motivation to keep going, even in times that feel, a little bit of adversity. This is how we build resilience. So I hope this has landed. I'm going to pause here because it's 5 o'clock and I realize I've spread out a lot of different ideas and concepts, but I don't know, Izzy, how are we doing? Are there any questions? What are the money archetypes? I can see one question that's coming. Yeah. So look, there are different ways of, I guess there's different ways of running a successful coaching business. My core values are freedom, independence, and sustainability. Those are my core values. As you can see from the story that I told about traveling the world, freedom is very much something I'm passionate about, learning about different cultures. And the money archetypes is a framework of 8 different archetypes, which help us understand a little bit more about how we operate in the world. They help us understand our values. They help us understand our strengths, our gifts, our blind spots. They help us understand our money mindset. There are 8 different archetypes in total. Mine is accumulator, ruler, maverick. And there are loads of different beautiful combinations of what archetypes you are. And I have seen, or one of the things that I notice is that you can have 2 health coaches, 2 people that are health coaches, and they can run their business in very different ways, but both have successful coaching businesses. And the reason why that is because of their archetypes. So as I said, for example, you might have someone who is a connector, who they are the relationship builders. So they might be very good at creating communities. They might be very good at creating experiences where lots of people gather together, networking, right? Then you might have romantics who are the inner hedonists. They love the little gifts and luxuries of life. So they might be someone who loves retreats or luxury retreats. There are so many different ways of running a coaching business. For me, as an accumulator, respect is what I illuminate in the world, which is why high touch one-to-one coaching resonates with me and why that's something that I've leaned into more. So I think it can help you understand more about how you operate, not just with money, but how it shows up in all of your life as well. So feel free to take the quiz, which might be in the description of the Animas lecture notes.
Claire Williams asks, how do you stop feelings of scarcity around clients when no one wants your coaching, even when donation-based? Brackets, currently offering £5 for sessions and no takers.
Yes. I love this question, but I hate it at the same time. Thanks, Claire. So it's interesting because Nick said earlier that, and this demonstrates perfectly the different money languages that we speak. Nick said earlier, if you're struggling to get started, just get practice. As a ruler, we have the tendency to over monetize. So everyone is coming from a different place. Now, for me, when you're coaching, it's an exchange of value. So, and I think I've said this in the last talk I did for Animas, but if you sign up to the gym and you spend £5 on the gym, you're not going to be as committed to going to the gym as you would be if you'd spent 400 quid going to the David Lloyd, right? Because you're going to want to show up and you're going to want to use the spa. It's the same thing for coaching. So by undervaluing yourself, you are effectively giving the, how can I say this? The prospect or the client the impression that this is not worth the value, right? Because someone who wants deep transformational change is going to be ready and want to invest. So I think it's twofold. First of all, the scarcity of there not being enough, that is a mindset, okay? Because when we are in alignment, opportunity is everywhere, right? You walk down the street and there's someone walking their dog and you say hi to them and they know someone who needs coaching. That is synchronicity, right? When you're aligned, that is how the energy of the universe flows. And yes, I'm quite spiritual, so that might resonate, it might not. But scarcity is when we're sitting in this place of not enough and we're looking for it. Like, where are the clients? That's not how the universe operates. We are the vessel for these clients to come in. So when we stand our worth and we charge the value of our session, we automatically emit a signal. Our energy gives out that we are worthy. So the client then thinks they are worthy of that change. You know, I've done coaching myself as the person being coached, where I've spent £20 on coaching and it hasn't been as impactful as when I've been scared and invested more. Why is that? It's because I've showed up differently to those sessions, because there's so much hanging on the line. I am 100% committed. I'm all in. And my intention is that the change is going to happen. For sales, and I selling is service. I don't know if we're in the business of selling. We should be in the business of receiving. We are gifting people, right? We are gifting people transformation. So when they understand that, and I think there was a question in the last meeting in the last session with Nick about, do we need to niche? I think when we get really clear on who we're helping and who we're serving, we can talk to them on the level of what they're really looking for. And then that way they will pay for that transformation. I hope that's making sense. I might have gone on a tangent. I can see a hand up. Jane's got a hand up. I think, first of all, as I said before, there is no right or wrong way of doing things. I think that's fundamental in all that we do. I personally have tried many different things in my business. Some have failed, some have been successful. And as I've learnt what's worked and what hasn't worked for what I teach, I've adapted and transformed and leaned into more of that. So, for example, creating, let me say it like this. There are some coaches who go by, let's say, a launch method, right? So you might have seen something on Instagram and they say in 4 weeks' time, we're going to have a freebie. And then you kind of like find yourself down in the funnel and you're getting emails every day. And then you maybe go to like something that has value for you. And then you start to go into the coaching, or you buy a program at the end of it. And that's going to be a set period of time. And then the coach is going to run that again. That's a version of a launch method. Now, for some people, that works brilliantly. For me, I found that I am an evergreen type person. I can't deal, because I'm financially independent, I can't deal with the anxiety, right? And this was something that came up before about, financial security. I think the regulation, the self-regulation around money comes before we actually create security, because you have to become the person who is emitting that stability. In terms of, creating the offer, I think it's important to look at, what your lifestyle looks like And therefore, if you do have a mortgage every month, if you have a partner who's supporting you, if you have kids who are in childcare, working out a framework of what actually works for you. When do you see yourself working? How many clients do you actually want to be working with? Do you want to be messaging people all day, every day? Or are you just going to be offering, just the session itself? Whatever you offer, it has value, but it's got to align with how you see your day-to-day running. So I don't know if I have an exact answer of, it needs to be done in X, Y, and Z way, but I think having a clear vision and maybe sitting down and thinking, with November, what do I want my new year to look like? How do I actually want to see, You mean just in general, how much people might charge? Oh, that's a big question. That's a big question. I mean, Nick said earlier that there was someone charging £60,000 for coaching, for coaching. I think it's about knowing where you sit in the context of the bigger picture of coaches. If you have one client who, actually, this is a good example. So I have a client, they're not a coach, but I have a client. They make 6 figures a year from 2 clients. They are running a very successful business, but they have got to a point where one of their clients isn't serving them anymore. They've increased their fees. And so the risk of charging more is that, when you've got a portfolio, maybe your portfolio is less diverse. And so if you lose one client, more of your eggs are in that basket. Some people might say, this is for me, I coach 10 people at once. That's my maximum. And so my pricing reflects that.
Yeah.
Some people might want to coach hundreds of people and charge £10. I think it depends on your vision and your capacity you have to actually support people in the transformation you're giving them. And I see people are sharing Denise Duffield-Thomas's Sacred Money Archetypes. That is the same quiz that I offer. She is not the creator of it. The creator is Kendall Summerhawk. The difference between perhaps someone like Denise and myself is firstly our archetypes. She's Australian, I'm British. I deal a lot with ISAs and tax in the UK and things like that. So there are differences and nuances within that. And obviously we have all evolved our own coaching approach to finances in a very different way. So my specific quiz has a training and workshop at the end of it. I can't speak for any of the others that are out there on the internet. So just to flag that. It doesn't really change. Yeah. It's kind of like it's a framework. So it's kind of like, Myers-Briggs or any other, what's the word I'm looking for? The word's gone from my head, but it's kind of like any framework that helps us better understand ourselves. Yeah. It's not that things are fixed. It's just that probably what's true for us, when we're up to the age of 7 and learn all our conditionings about money, it's likely that that's followed through. So it doesn't necessarily change. I've never seen it change from anyone, and I don't.
Okay.
So, Karen, what are the common money blocks?
Yeah. What are the common money blocks? Big question. I think I definitely covered this in the last session that I did. So if you guys want to know more, some of the talks that I've given at Animas, one of them was very practical with like an Excel spreadsheet. Some of them have been a bit more around ideas. The last one, we did touch on money blocks. I think it depends on where you're at, because I coach people who are from all different walks of life. So we've spoken here about alchemists and romantics and accumulators. Everyone's going to have a different lens that they see money. So some people are going to think, I don't have enough. Some people might be coming from that place of scarcity. Some people, it might be more about the fear of not achieving enough. So it could show up as like setting targets and then the belief that we need to have a bigger, better, bolder target. And so we keep moving the goalpost. And for that, that might show up as burnout. So often we overwork ourselves. We find that, we've overexerted ourselves or spent too much time doing something. And so we might feel like we're always chasing. Another money block might be, not being responsible with money, not feeling like you're going to manage it in the right way if you had it. So sometimes it's not always about a fear of failure. Sometimes it's a fear of actually succeeding. What happens if this takes off? Am I the type of person, as Nick said earlier, when he went from £16,000 to £105,000, he said that he spent it all on a Porsche for his then partner, right? So there is something to, money blocks showing up, in all aspects of life, whether that's how we actually spend our money. I'm not worthy of the money, and so I need to spend it all on something. The weight of carrying debt. I'm never going to be rich. All of these things are things that we might say to ourselves, it's not about the money. That's something that maybe alchemists might say. Or just this idea that we don't really care about the financial future. I've heard there's an idea that well, let me put it this way. When I'm financial goal setting with people, we set short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals. Now, with long-term goals, I ask people, when do you see yourself retiring? How much do you need for retirement? Most people don't want to think about this question. Most people don't want to think about getting old. Who wants to think about getting old? Let's be realistic. But that is the reality of the life that we live in. And so a money block could be a fear of the future, right? People in my family don't live past the age of 60, so I don't need to think about it, right? These are all very real things that we experience, real fears and real blocks that we might have about how we're using our money effectively today, or our power and our integrity today to create that life and future for yourselves. So it could be as big as, what you see yourself doing at retirement, but a money block could also be, how do I get my next client tomorrow? So I think it happens at different levels, but until you really explore it and unpack it, sometimes, as we all know from coaching, what we think is the problem is never really the problem. So, yeah. And I hope that answers that question.
Jane Gordon, can you say more about creating a pricing structure, please?
Well, this has come up a lot. I'm trying to think if I covered this more specifically in some of the sessions. Pricing structures are so nuanced. I don't think there is one right way of doing things. I really don't. I do think that there are a lot of people, and too many people, undercharging or not charging at all. That is all to do with, first of all, as Nick has said earlier, the way that the coaching industry has evolved. There are a lot of coaching jobs out there. I don't want to put a name to them, but there are some that are paying people £40 an hour. That's not going to give you the freedom that you desire. It's just not, right? The £28,000 job a year is not going to give you the financial freedom that you desire. It might give you a comfortable life, but it might not give you the freedom that you really want. So I think when we are pricing, I always start with the vision that we want for ourselves. I always start with looking, and look, some people like a budget, some people don't. I changed this slightly. If you like a budget, you could do a budget. If you don't, it's important to know, what are the things important to your life? Do you want to show up to your kid's graduation? Do you want to find a soulmate? Do you want to buy a new car in 5 years? Do you want to have a property? Do you want to go and live on the beach in Thailand? I think our starting point when it comes to finances and income, regardless whether we're employed or self-employed, it doesn't matter, should always be our lifestyle. And then we can reverse engineer backwards. What does our lifestyle look like? And as the lady said earlier, who put up her hand, once we know what that lifestyle looks like, then you can start to price your packages accordingly. So if you only want to coach 2 people, well, the capacity that you need for one person is going to be a lot more. And so you're going to charge a lot more. And that's why we need to understand our vision, and what we actually want to be doing with our time. I think that's probably the most fundamental thing. Coaching as an industry, unless you've got renting out a room, and even if you're renting out a room, your expenses are not going to be high. It's not like a dentist where you're buying enamel for the teeth, right? Or whatever they call it. You're investing in yourself and your skills. That's where your expenses might be, and maybe a few systems like Zoom or Google. But really, margins of coaching are actually quite high. So really, we want to be focusing more on the vision that you want to create, so that you can create that sustainable package that you want to offer people. What do you think is the minimum you should charge when you're starting out? I think that's for you to decide what would feel right. I mean, people start charging free. Some people don't even have a starting. When I started out, I think I did £40 an hour, but that felt too cheap, and very quickly I increased it to about £60. And now I don't really do one-off coaching sessions. I have a program and a package. So starting out, I think you need to do what feels comfortable for you, but don't undercharge to be a people pleaser and feel resentment. The last place you want to be is resent someone for not paying for your time, because you have the skills. You have the skills because you've paid £6,000 to Animas to do it, right? So the value that you're teaching is more than that, right? Because it's a combination of all of your experience. So the minimum you should charge is the fee that you resent.
Does a dominant money archetype determine the system we use for business?
Ooh, juicy question. Yes and no. Is that a cop-out? Yes and no. I do notice that there are certain industries where certain archetypes show up more. So, for example, a lot of connectors come to me, a lot of nurturers. Funny enough, not a lot of romantics, but that might be my marketing. I get a lot of accumulators. I notice that nurturers are often caregivers. That's not to say that people who are caregivers have to be a nurturer. It's just that sometimes I see a common theme that nurturers are in these roles where they are supporting other people. So I've done work with, GP practitioners who are running their GP practice, and they are very nurturing and very caring, but that money is not being reflected back in their lives in some form of way because they don't feel responsible for it. I find that a lot of people that work in the finance industry, so financial coach, are accumulators, people that are accountants, for example, who are very good at the numbers. They might be mavericks, someone who loves the financial details. So I think, yes, there are common themes, but I don't think that should be viewed in a restrictive way. Like, if you are a certain archetype, you can't be something, because actually I think that should be our point of difference. That should be a strength that we lean into, because that might be our USP, the way that we do things. As I said before, Denise Duffield-Thomas, she's a romantic, I'm an accumulator. I help people with the tangible stuff. Some people hate the tangible stuff. So I think it's about leaning into our strengths. No matter what archetype you are, you can achieve it, whatever you set your mind to. If you can conceive it, if your stream of consciousness is leading you in a certain direction, it's being in tune and aligned to see those opportunities, right? So I don't think that's necessarily a wrong thing, except unless it's a lesson.
On mute. Sorry, I was just talking. I was on mute there. We've got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to ask one more question, and then Sarah, have people got a place to reach out to in case they have a question?
I I'll drop my link to my
No
LinkedIn.
worries.
That's my LinkedIn. So if you want to like message me, that's probably the easiest place. It's where I hang around most on LinkedIn, although I am on Instagram.
Rachel asked, and we'll have this as the last question of the day. You've talked about having a system. I try and fail at being organised, and while I think systemically, I get overwhelmed by maintaining a system. Can you give some tips on how to create a system? What types of systems we might consider?
Yeah, so I think the easiest thing is to block time. Even time for relaxing. I often, or something that I see, when we spoke about this earlier, in that when we feel like resistance to something, we might procrastinate in a certain way. Something that I hear is feeling like you're not getting time off, even though you work for yourself and you've set a boundary between when you're actually working and when you're not. But what happens is, because we might feel like we're not being productive, we end up relaxing in times we feel we shouldn't be. And so it propels this idea of guilt, like we should be doing something. So I think we need to get really clear on how you're spending your time. And I mean, like, put in a 20-minute walk, put in 10 minutes in the morning to answer your emails. I think it's okay if you don't end up sticking to your plan. What's important is that we're moving in the right direction always. We're taking small steps towards something that we want to achieve, always moving forward. And if we miss the mark on something, or we feel like we're disorganized, maybe that is a symptom of not knowing. Do you know what I mean? So how can I don't know if that makes sense. Who asked that question? You write in the chat if that made sense. So in other words, if we're not clear about where we should be spending our time, we end up spending it in all different areas because we don't have the framework of a system, right? And so we end up, I need to send a little email over here, and now I'm going to have a lie down, and now I'm going to do a coaching session, but there is no maybe time that's actually blocked out, so you end up feeling guilty. So I think it's important to have maybe not routine. I like Nick. I don't like to set an alarm in the morning, so I start coaching at 10 o'clock, but I also coach until 8 o'clock at night some days. So my pattern is fluid, but that system works for me. So it doesn't have to be 9 to 5 every day. Some days it could be 1 till 8, right? But as long as the schedule works for you, I think that's probably the easiest. But to find your path of least resistance to that organization, it is leaning into the things that you find you're really good at.
Brilliant.
That makes sense. I don't know who asked that question, but you can jump in the chat and just
it was Rachel Nelms. And
thanks,
Rachel liked it, so I thought that it would be an important one to bring up. But yeah, thank you so much, Sarah. That brings us to time, 5:30 on nearly.
I saw as well, someone said, build business around your human design type. Yeah, the system you're trying to build might be working out your human design type. Yeah, so human design, astrology, all of the spiritual stuff, it does tie in with your money archetype, even numerology. So I do lean into the spiritual side of things, the mindset side of things. But for me, it is very much about bringing that down into something tangible that we can actually see and feel and experience as well in terms of money as well. So I think if the biggest takeaway that I could say right now is not to be heart heavy into your business, in the sense of giving over everything that you feel you have in order to fulfill a client's needs, in order to create this successful business. We should be doing it through our hands, through the doing, through the action. Because when we become so emotionally tied in and our coaching and our business becomes our identity, it can become very hard to give ourselves permission or to step away from things. So I'd really say, it throughout your businesses. Go with your hands, go with the actions of doing, and then pause and reflect, so that you can better understand yourself and how you're showing up within that. So rather than it actually being your identity in and of itself.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Sarah. I'm going to draw it to a close there, everybody. This has been a fantastic day. We've had so much amazing comments, and people have loved the speakers that have joined us today. And Sarah, we're receiving so much positivity about yourself.
Oh, thanks.
The chat. So thank you so much again. Sarah has dropped her LinkedIn in the chat, so if anyone wants to connect with her, please do. But yeah, I'm going to put this as a formal close to today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining the summit, and hopefully see you next year. We'll do this again.